going. You're on.
We're live.
Good morning. We are at the ad hoc committee for the Harwich Port parking. Going to have a call to order. This is being taped as required by law. The town may audio or video record this meeting. Any person intending to either audio or video record this open session is required to inform the chair. At this time, I'd like the members of the board to please introduce themselves. Try to get my right.
Charlene Greenhouse, town planner.
Cindy Williams, Harwich Chamber of Commerce Executive Director.
John Mahan?
Mike Ulrich.
Al Donahue. I'd like to have a motion to accept the minutes of the meeting from the 6th of March.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from March 6th with one change to that. I was present at that meeting.
I am terribly sorry. It's called cutting and pasting. I will make that correction.
Thank you.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. All right, first order of business is old business. The continued review and discussion of working draft plan report to selectmen, including possible comments from Selectman Michael McCaskill.
I did send it to him.
With regard to the working draft, I think we decided we're going to get this completed by, refresh my memory, we're showing next week. Okay. What we're going to do is decide what it is we're going to provide to the selectmen. Because we're an ad hoc committee, as we all know, this is just an advisory, basically, to the selectmen. They will do with it as they see fit. So, where do we stand? What are our recommendations? Most of which we've touched upon in the past, not the least of which is utilizing for parking the barn/harbor master's office on Bank Street, having that lot lined so as to park motor vehicles. One of the other recommendations has been, in order to provide to the public a sign in the parking lot, the public municipal parking lot. And I think we sort of indicated, and I think Michael might have brought that up, was the letter P, which is pretty common in most areas, urban and for the most part, since it's a indication that everybody recognizes. We also had discussed getting a date for removal of the boats from the Harbor Master's building. I noticed the other day there's a few more boats, I think, up there. And I'm quite certain that they're going to be removing that, I would assume, by sometime in early May.
It's supposed to be done by May 20th.
May 20th, yeah. Basically when the harbor will be under full use. We had discussed the possibility of a kiosk. I don't know if we got any further information on that. I know you had done some stuff and John had as
Right.
well.
It's rather costly.
But I think, yeah, we kind of shelved that for right now,
Mhm.
you know. I think it was been agreed that we do not want to put any more costs into this parking. The use of Cape Cod transportation for a shuttle, that's going to be the recommendation.
So they've been away, they're just back,
Cape
no, it's Cape Destination.
Cape Destination.
So I will reach out to them to get with them to see what the cost would be. With the businesses I have heard from, it's a handful. So I'm kind of torn. And until I have a cost from them, I don't see every business in Harwichport paying for something that they're not using. So I want to have the conversation with the owners of Cape Destinations, find out what the cost is, and then come back to you next week with that.
Okay. Let me ask the board this. You put a lot of work into this. And given the fact that many of the businesses haven't gone through downtown the other day, like I said, and open. And I suspect the ones which will be preparing to open up by probably mid-April or early April, they're gonna have a lot on their minds regarding their business openings, hiring individuals and getting themselves together. If we are unable to get the business community, at least regard to their employees parking their motor vehicles under the current ideas we have relative to moving for the transportation. Do we have any suggestions from the board as to how to handle this? Because if we're going to do the harbor master's office, do all this labor up there of getting it marked up, and then find out, well, that the business community isn't really all that interested. And we've got this parking space up there, which the town has got an investment in to a degree. Anybody got any ideas where we should go with this?
To me, honestly, I didn't really necessarily see this happening this season.
Okay.
I mean, this is a recommendation that's due to the board by mid-May. That's all we can do.
Right.
So here's the recommendation.
Right.
You know, it may be something that needs more, but we gotta give them something.
Right.
Well, I would say that if, like for this season, it's, because it's gonna be hard to formulate then how do you make it work as far as kind of requiring them to do it. I think if a business expands, if there's a business, lots of businesses that don't have any parking at all, let alone for employees, or very limited parking, if they're using the town parking as part of their business plan, they should participate in the solution to that, because they're adding to the problem. They're also benefiting from our committee here, volunteers, trying to come up with a solution for everybody, for the residents as well as the businesses. But now, I think, starting off at very minimal expense, we could maybe even have a sign, some sort of a sign, Harwichport business parking or something at that location, line them, and it's gonna be a kind of a volunteer basis. So I think, you know, when we're talking to the different businesses, you know, the shuttle piece may not come into play.
So you're
That's
talking you're talking about fire station?
On Bank Street,
Okay.
yeah, so it's not gonna be, as to your point, I think a business is gonna be, you know, one more thing I gotta think about, do I wanna participate, how many employees do I have that are gonna even be using this, how much is it gonna cost me, it's gonna be additional expense, I don't, you know, I just got here, I'm just opening my doors and I'm hit with this. So that may be some pushback on that, but I think if it's just opened up, the lot's there and it's volunteered, and say, hey, if you wanna provide parking for your clients, paying customers, you wanna take advantage of that lot that we've now created for you, and if you don't wanna use the shuttle, or maybe the shuttle doesn't work this year, it's too soon or whatever, they're gonna have to find another way to get, you know, it's not that far to get to their, to get, you know, a mile, less than a mile to get there, so I think it would be just a good opportunity to have it open anyways, and then if we need to fine tune it over next year, you know, in the winter or whatever, but that would be my thought. I think it'd be hard to force them to use the shuttle piece right now.
So what I'm hearing is to mark up the lot, get the harbor master's lot prepared, get it marked in anticipation that, this falls back on you.
So doesn't everything else.
Well, but
So,
I mean, just getting information out.
right, which is fine, because they have,
which
so,
has nothing to do with the town per se.
Right.
Right,
It's
right.
So
the
the bus-
merchants that
right, and the businesses have responded, not everyone, but the majority of the ones that have, that are the ones that are using it, and again, we can't tell them that they can't because it's a public lot, but, we don't have what the cost is, the town can't pay for this. Also, all the little guys, you know, aren't gonna say, okay, yes, I am going to pay for that, because it's an added expense, but I had another thought, and, comes out of nowhere, but the side parking lot that is by Mason Tree and the Anchorage, it's the additional public parking. I went over there yesterday and counted the spots. There are 25 spots. Now, I had said that there's between 30 and 40 employees / beach, mainly the employee piece, that we wanted to kind of remove and then open that up for the patrons. So what if, and I've spoken with public safety on a couple of things regarding this and some signage at the lot. We take that side lot and put, I have to read my notes because I wrote this last night, 2 barrels that say employee parking. You've got a lane that goes in and out. We have these orange barrels, they have signage on them, employee parking only, or business employee parking, whatever we come up with for the verbiage. And this was actually something I got from Deputy Chief Considine last night. He and I had a conversation, that we could do it in that way and out, so then it's just for the employees of that piece. And then regarding Schoolhouse Road, all the signage that we had brought up in the last meeting, we can definitely do a paved, because that is the universal sign for parking. So on 28, you've got the big sign that says tourist information. Under that, it says public, a little skinny sign that says public parking. We can put the P there. We do have to keep Schoolhouse Road there, because my building address is there, but also there's a house on Schoolhouse Road as well, so we can't remove that. But,
It's a public way, you can't do it.
right,
Yeah.
well, we weren't sure if we could take that, we were trying to alleviate having it look like Vegas with all these signs, you know?
Yeah.
So, if we do the tourist information, because we need to keep that, and then the P, that does the public. But then for the employee piece, until we have what the cost is, and if there's any creative spin that I can put on it with the businesses, that's something that I don't know if we can do. Or what do you guys think?
I'm not a proponent of that.
I know, I just,
The town spent $35,000 improving that, and I just don't think it's fair to make it just employee parking.
Well, I think it's a good idea, but I think you're just shifting the parking. It's still, you
No,
still
I
got the
know.
same spaces being used, and that parking lot is full anyways during the summertime, so it's not like it was empty, you know what I mean?
The side
But-
lot is full? That was gonna be my next
not
question.
every day.
No, but it's pretty close.
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
it
'cause
is,
people
it
do
is,
kind
it
of,
is full.
people do kind of huddle
I
around
was
and
just
just
trying to
trying
come up
to.
with something else
Right.
other than the Bank Street, because there's a cost to it.
Right.
And the
But
chambers
so
are
the,
not-
so the Bank Street thing, I think that with having a parking, employee parking, or Harwich Port business parking, or whatever we want to call it, to kind of give people the idea that that's where it is, and then educating people just for this year that, you know, when we're talking to the business owners, that this is where we want you to, you know, you can't force them to park there, but this is where we really want you to encourage, and the benefit to them is, again, that their clients have a place to park. If an employee is taking 10 spaces, there's 10 spaces that a client
coming
is
for
not gonna
dinner.
use, that are coming for dinner, they're not going to Cranberry Jewelers, they're not going to other businesses, they're gonna just drive on through, they're gonna go, you know, Chatham or Dennisport or whatever. They're gonna say, oh, there's no parking. So their that's their carrot. They're gonna hopefully get more business by having the ability to get more people into their establishment, whatever business we have. And maybe this year, it's just, with very minimal cost, it's just setting up that lot, getting them educated to that, and then maybe going forward. And I think the shuttle piece was kind of our way to come up with a better solution for the employees, especially ones that may work at night or get out late at night. That's looking for another benefit for them, but there's certainly a cost, and maybe that's something we can work on in the off-season or something.
Now, the parking you're referring to, is that the lot behind the mason jar and by?
No, this
no.
is the one, so you know where the Anchorage
Yeah.
entrance, so right next to that,
Okay.
there's
I know.
those 25 spots right there, that's at
It's
the back of the bank.
It's blocked up behind the bank.
Mm.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, when I was wandering around town the other day, I was looking behind the new building, and I think there's about 50 to 60 lot spots back there. He said that's what I miscounted, but somewhere in that order. But the vast majority of the ones directly behind the building, which I think was 24, I think it's 12 and 12 back there. I'm assuming, I don't assume anything, that is going to be for the apartments upstairs
And
and the retail. And if I, and as
Not
I
this year, they're
peer in
going.
looking at the retail, which I know nothing about, other than the square footage on the, it appears as though, because the number of doors, it appears as though it might be set up, because there's gonna be portable walls, I'm guessing, for between 2 and 4
retail spaces.
retail
Yep.
spaces.
Yeah, depending on which way you went, if you took the
Yeah.
front, you could do two, you could,
And those retail spaces are there in the back, you know. There's not gonna be a lot of parking. I think those 60 spaces, and you might know better than I would on this, those 60 spaces are gonna get eaten up pretty quickly between the package store, the hot stove.
The
the-
Hot stove is
There's
no-
no right to park there. And
They-
from what
well,
I've
they
been
may
told,
not,
what
but-
I've been told is they're gonna tow.
I had heard they were putting a gated, like a,
the initial.
not a gated
That-
tenant, but
We can't even count that as being
That's-
okay.
available.
Okay,
We cannot count that as being available
yeah,
at all.
because it was considered to be, at one time, it was on the table, thought it was part of the parking downtown, which clearly is not, it's private property, I get all
It was
that.
always
It's always
private,
private.
it was perceived as
Yes.
public, and so
Right.
everyone got used to it, and now they're used to it over the winter as well. But the gentleman that owns the building owns that parking,
Yeah.
and when the whole negotiation was going back and forth, he had said that he would have valet this year. Whether or not that still is gonna happen, I don't know, there aren't any businesses going in there.
So
So-
if that's not available, and we understand it's not public parking, but that's not available, it has traditionally been available, that adds more parking that's unavailable to the general public.
but it really wasn't available last year, because
Exactly.
Dino's had come down,
Right.
the food truck had been,
Yeah.
so they were eased into, the people were eased into it.
Yeah.
So I don't remember it being, I mean, the parking in our building was not a major problem
Yeah,
last year,
yeah.
even with the
But still,
construction.
people were parking at the far end of the parking lot, which butts Braddock on the other side. And those were customers coming in, and they were just parking there because of tradition.
Mhm.
Now, as you indicate, that will not be available if they put,
So the other thing that we can do is, and I don't know logistically and liability purposes and all that without having the conversation, but we can reach out to the owner and say, okay, and I need an update anyway, I haven't been able to get any straight answers, but can reach out and say, okay, what's the plan? This is what I know was discussed, can we have an update? Okay. Can this be public parking for this summer? While we're then working on our initial plans again to continue finding the perfect scenario. I don't know.
The only problem with that is if you hang the carrot this year and say it's public parking. Now, whether you don't advertise it and people
Yeah.
park there and there's no they don't do anything. But to say this year it's public and next year you're gonna be towed,
Yeah,
I think you're throwing a mixed.
But
Right.
I think we just have to do some public service announcements that that is not. I think we have to, again, educate, that's not public parking.
Well, I think the owner of the property.
Yeah, that's
Right.
not
Yeah,
ours.
it's not
Exactly.
our-
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
leagues will say, hey, can you please let people know? I mean, we're working on some great plans of what we're trying to come up with for parking, but need some help.
I think that's, that building, Bob Hall, who had that before, he just had it open and just, he was fine with anybody using it, and then when it's sold, and we know the history behind all that, it's no longer that way. And I think that just having the building there and having the do not enter signs, and it's not certainly welcoming, I think that a lot of people are not even using that, and visually you don't see it anymore. You used to see it, now you just,
Yeah,
so that's why
that's
it's
a good
important, I
point.
think, to, again, emphasize to the businesses to utilize that Bank Street.
Right.
And, all of these reasons why we don't have the parking that we did have, say, 2 or 3 years ago.
Mr. Chair. Back to Cindy's thought on that side lot. I personally think that's a great idea. Even if it's just to get the employee parking that have rights to use that lot out of the mainstream. A lot of people don't know that side lot is there, from what I can hear. I mean, Michael said it's been full at times.
It has, I
So-
mean, it has, but there have also been times it's empty, so.
So if, I mean, at least that gets them out of the main, when people come in, they see the lot. It might increase traffic flow, it might be less in and out. So I think that's a good idea if we can do it. I'll defer to Mike and Cindy because they know more about the merchants than I do. I don't see the merchants walking a mile from Bank Street to Howardsport. That's just my gut. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. Like I said, I'll defer to,
Yeah, probably, I'm sure you're right, like Peter,
Well, it's
He's
a
not
mile
gonna do
from
that,
there to Bank Street Beach.
right, so
Right.
it's a little.
okay, so it's less than a mile. And then the other thing is, what if you did a combination of 2-hour parking and that side lot for the merchant employees? Doesn't really cost any money. You're kind of corralling them.
Excuse me, would you explain that again?
We had talked last
Yes, we
meeting
did.
about 2-hour parking.
Right. That was
So
for
if you
the
do
main-
that, that's going to eliminate 90%, I believe, of your beach parking is not going to park there 2 hours. And
Oh, I agree with that. But
Yeah. No.
I'm not keen on just having employee parking only in that side lot. To me, that's a more primo parking lot. It's closer to Route 28, the shops, than way back towards Pleasant Street.
What are they using right now,
What?
the employee? Are they parking, do we
wherever they
know?
want.
They're parking
They-
wherever they.
Wherever they want, wherever they can
They
find
can take the
spots.
first 10 spots if they
Yeah.
want to.
Cross
But do
Street,
we actually know where they park?
In that public lot, yes. I mean, I don't know,
Okay.
and Cross Street,
yeah,
and other places, yeah, 'cause
Okay.
I
Oh, they
sometimes,
do.
yeah, they're all up and down Cross Street too. I see them walking
Sure.
to Heather's, to
I mean,
Embers.
this is a 9 to
you know.
5 kind of thing that we need to pull out. Because after 5 o'clock, I have confirmed with both of the banks, Cape Cod 5 and TD, that we can let people know that there is nighttime parking available after 5 at both those banks. So even that piece, I mean, some of the businesses could even have employees park there. If they're at a 5
yeah.
o'clock shift, like a 5 to midnight kind of shift, well, there you go. That could even,
So let me ask the committee this. Part of the issue in this has been Pleasant Street. So what's our thought, or our proposal, regarding parking on Pleasant Street, if nothing else, to try to alleviate some of the neighborhood concerns for Pleasant Street?
Well, even,
Well, that's only on the Wednesday
Mr.,
Right,
whose
right.
name just totally escapes me, the gentleman who did the presentation.
Yes, yes.
I beg your pardon for not remembering your name. He even said they don't want to detract from parking because
Right.
even residents along there will park
Guests
on-
and
Yeah.
landscapers
What
and
they
so
do,
on.
that is in the draft, is
Yeah.
committee supports continued efforts by the police department to limit parking along side streets during large events in Harwich Port, you know, on one side,
Right.
not in total.
Sure.
And one of
So
the
does it-
complaints they had was it's more in the landscaping vehicles and those kind of things that are really kind of.
So am I hearing, are we agreeing that the Harbor Master's building slash fire is going to be marked up? Or is that going to be also, does the committee feel as though that should be put off until the recommendation is made to the selectmen and they make the final decision, which they would anyway,
Well-
whether that, if we should, you know.
What was the cost? Does anybody remember what I said? Link told us $700?
Like
$700 minimum,
Yeah,
or,
that's-
oh, it was a $400 minimum,
Yeah.
but for the amount of spots we talked, it was like,
Yeah.
so it'd be an $800 give or take,
Plus the sign.
plus signage, yep.
To me, that's a very cheap investment to try and get people.
But
to-
it isn't if they don't use it.
Right.
Right,
Well, I think that it's just, again, you're just kind of getting the idea out.
right.
Mhm.
And if we educate some of the, you know, so when I was thinking about merchants, I'm not thinking about certain people going, walking, you know, parking, go to their business. I'm thinking more of the younger folks that work at the restaurants, that work at the kite shop and the candy, you know, the younger folks that could certainly walk, that's not that far a walk. And if we got a sidewalk right there, and if, you know, just to get the idea, get educated, and then maybe we can continue to work on the other piece, which would be the shuttle, if that's something that even makes sense. But I think that would make sense to at least
Try
get
it.
it out there, to
Okay, so
visually
the-
see it, and to
So
get
if
the
I
sign
understand the
there.
way, I know where Mike is going, and I think, John, you mark this lot up. Recommend that the lot be marked up for this season, so it might be utilized by the public, and thereby, with some luck, employees will park up there. And the recommendation is gonna be the putting the parking sign onto the municipal lot on 28. Utilize the back lot, which I'm gonna refer to as the one that's adjacent to the
Tea
tea
bag lot.
bag. I don't know if I wanna go on the limb and just take that and use it for employee parking.
I'm personally not keen on that idea,
Yeah,
but
I'm not
I
either.
can't support that.
No, I'm
I
not.
just can't.
And what's your reasoning, Mike?
well, I think that the lots, you're just shifting. In other words, if you have 100 spaces and you have 100 people in those spaces, they're all full, but you have 150 people that want to use those spaces, you haven't done anything, you just kind of shifted them around. Maybe with traffic flow or whatever, you're kind of designating that as a separate off the beaten path kind of thing, so I get that. But I'd really like to see us utilize additional parking to come up with, you know, that's not gonna be a solution, it's just gonna be that's just my opinion, just shifting it around as opposed to coming up with, like we had talked about with some of Dennis's lots, which maybe we can talk a little about later, or the Bank Street, that's creating additional, that's what we need more space. And I just think that that's just my feeling, that it's not helping that cause.
What about the 2-hour max parking? What do you think that would
I
do?
think that's a good idea, definitely, yeah.
I don't think we're there yet.
Oh,
But I do think that's a good idea.
That would be for the future. That would not be taken. The only thing I'm thinking way we're going as a committee is Bank Street, get it marked up. Get the parking signs, just not to beat a dead horse here, but get the parking signs in. And beyond, the recommendations for the future would be the shuttle, once the merchants, hello,
Oh, pardon me.
excuse me. Love phones. So getting the parking lot, everything else will be provided as a recommendation by the committee for the future, meaning the season following this one. Should the selectmen choose to use our recommendations relative to discussing with the merchants, because as you have said, and it's absolutely true, there has been articles in the paper about hiring for the summer. And these merchants are going to be up against it this summer trying to find employees. And like you were saying, dealing with this, whether employees are going to park, is going to be so far down their to-do list, except for maybe a few. The rest of them are just not going to be all that interested.
Right.
All right, let me just kind of poll the table. This, Charlene dutifully put everything together and did a nice job, by the way, thank you. All right, Mike, what's your recommendation?
Just because we're getting scattered and it's hard for me to take minutes at this point.
I use the shotgun approach.
Which is great, but for the
Yeah.
note taker, it's
Terrible,
not so
I
keen.
apologize.
If we could go through, right now, there are 4 recommendations
Yeah.
on here. If we could go through these, and if you want to break them apart or have them whatever. Also, I'm not going to be able to spend like any more time on this.
Right,
So if it needs to be edited drastically, somebody else is going to have to do it.
Before we do the employee parking with Charlene's recommendation, jump to number 3, because, and I actually thought of the whole Bank Street idea months and months ago. But if we don't have a shuttle provided, I don't know what the guarantee is that anyone's going to use that. If we tell them, okay, we have pretty signs and everything, Harwich Port business employee parking there, that's great, but I think we should also talk about doing this limit of 2 hours. So there should be,
Actually, it says limit of
well, whatever,
no
no,
hours
sorry.
right now.
Whatever we decide as the hours during the 9 to 5, because that's gonna help what happens with this employee parking. Right now, if we go with the recommendation of marking it, and as some have said, doing the future of a shuttle, what's the guarantee that everyone's going to, the businesses are going to use the off-site if there's not everyone's gonna walk. So, we've gotta do a couple of things. We should also, I think, just figure out the limit thing too, before we do where we're,
all right.
well, then I don't,
In all fairness to Charlene,
Yeah.
let's just,
sorry, I just,
No, I know, I'm just trying to.
I know.
My brain is
Um,
mush.
So let me just, okay, the committee met a total of, I forget the times, but on-site parking shuttle. It's clear the committee, and I want to get a consensus, because she's put a lot of work into this. The estimated 30 employee vehicle parking term in this lot in the height of the season. It is the committee's recommendation that parking be provided outside of the village with a shuttle to provide transportation. Yes. The committee looked at several options, including the cultural center, Sisson Road, Sagwatucket, yes, all that. The discussion of the harbor master, the site should be vacated of all vehicles, yes. A quick estimate of the area which should not require any removal of vegetation, yes, Charlene. Ms. Williams has met with members of the Chamber of Commerce, the Chamber, to determine the interest of business here in participating in the shuttle program. That has been done. Nothing has been solidified. The shuttle would be funded by the businesses. I think the wording on that should be, they will be approached with regard to funding. Because we can't make a declarative statement if we don't know
well,
the
right,
answer.
because we need to know how
Right.
much it costs. So I always
Exactly.
think we should
Delete that.
take that all out together right
Okay.
now.
Okay, parking passes for employees would be needed. Okay, that we hang on to. Line painting within the Bank Street properties is recommended so as to provide well-established and defined parking spaces. Otherwise, parking would be haphazard. We know that to be true. All right, number 2, continued parking signs on side street for large events. That's already been addressed by you through the police department, Charlene, as well. The committee supports the continued effort of the police department, and we're in agreement on that. 3, the restriction of hours for parking the Schoolhouse Road lot, excuse me, associated signage. We recommend, that's where the bugaboo right now is, a limit of blank hours for parking between 9 and 5. Is there going to be a recommended limit? Has been suggested for 2 hours by the committee.
I think that's what we should do. I think if we go more than that, you're gonna then get your beach parking in there.
Right.
So, I had a Harwich Port meeting 2 weeks ago, and some of the businesses that attended did ask about 3 hours. I think if we do 3 hours, it's people going to the beach for 3 hours. And then that takes away from cars, patrons going to their businesses. So my suggestion would be the 2 hours.
All right. Now, the 2 hours, I'll throw this back at John. Who's gonna enforce that?
Well, like we said, unless there is something on the signage saying if you park over 2 hours, you're gonna get fined, you know, as I recall from previous meetings, the idea was for this year to do it on a trustworthy basis.
Mhm.
And if that doesn't work, then the following year, you put you know, you will be fined, I don't know what the fineage is for parking.
Sure.
You
You
know,
wanna do that for the subsequent year?
if it's necessary.
Okay.
And I would put right on the bottom of that blue P, that's where I would put the parking 2 hour max, 9 to 5. Right on the bottom of that blue. Just put a little rider right,
While why don't we do, I mean, they're both
Well,
about the
this-
same size, the signs.
but we're back to Vegas again. If you just put a little rider on the bottom of the P,
Right.
it's not an additional sign.
Right.
That's
So
my
what
only
people
thought.
see.
But you still need signage within the lot.
Yes.
Yes, oh, absolutely.
Okay.
That's the that is along along the sides, it's not a problem.
And is it 9 to 5 Monday through Friday? Is it 9 to 5?
Oh, I would do it 7 days a
Every
week.
day?
Days a week.
Yeah,
So that needs to be
Don't
added.
confuse it.
right.
And I think the middle is my concern. I don't know if the signage coming in on either end is going to be enough, but you can't put an individual sign in those middle spots,
Right.
where you can on the ones around the perimeter, but the ones in the middle, you can't sign.
But hopefully, if you had enough sporadically throughout that
Sure.
whole
And
area.
you'd have one as you
coming in.
enter
Right.
from Pleasant, you'd have 1 or 2 as you enter from,
Mhm.
Right.
and then you do the signs like they usually do, pointing inward, if, you
Right.
know, people are.
Again, it's an education thing. It's gonna be
Right,
when they
right.
get their stickers, when they get information from the chamber.
And like anything else in life, it's all subject to change.
Right.
Absolutely.
So the first year is gonna be, there's a learning curve on this. And, all right, so we're in agreement,
2 hours?
2 hours.
How do you think that will impact merchants? We talked about merchants.
Yes.
And hiring. If someone has a car and they know they're gonna work at XYZ, but they don't have parking, I guess, because at 2 hours, the employees won't be able to park at that lot. It will be interesting, and Cindy can get feedback from the owners, that, you know what, we're getting pushback that we can give them a job, but we can't give them a place to park. That'd be something I think to keep an eye on.
All right, you have made an excellent suggestion there by bringing that up. If the merchants, who Cindy has had some difficulty at this earliest part of the season, have not been able to can touch base with them, but if their employees go to the boss and say, look, they've got a sign up there, it becomes common knowledge through the network that there is a place to park for the employees.
Mhm.
We might just be able to force the employer and encourage the employee into the Bank Street lot without having to do a tremendous, let nature take its
Especially
course.
9 to 5.
Right.
Yeah.
Let
I
nature take
mean,
its course.
You know, in the evening, I can see an employer not wanting necessarily to have their employee walk
At
at
midnight.
night
Right.
down the road. But certainly from 9 to 5, I mean, I know as a kid, I used to ride my bicycle even when I was, 20 years old
Right.
to work.
Yeah.
Because there was no parking available. So it was like, all right, I'll ride the 5 miles or whatever.
Right, you do what you gotta do.
You do it, or you take the public transportation,
Right.
depending upon,
And this
where
is
you
a
are.
trial. It may not be
Yeah.
perfect this year,
Right.
Right,
but it's a start.
right, to your point, this, you can always subject to change, right, like
Mhm.
life, but it's a start, and it's a solution, and there's really not a lot of options out there,
Right.
and we're trying to do the best we can for everybody, for the residents as well as the businesses,
Mm-hmm.
and, who supports us and feeds us, which is the
Yeah.
tourists and
Mhm.
people come visit Harwich.
And like was, we beat up again, but the employees this could be employee driven. The parking aspect of it. Because those 2-hour parking, hey, I can't leave my car for 2 hours. They may actually just morph right into the parking that we're hoping that will happen. All right,
But
so,
the other thing is, if the selectmen don't approve the Bank Street lot,
it's all,
forget the 2-hour parking, because where
Yeah.
are people gonna park?
Right.
That's right.
all this is a recommendation anyway. All right, additional signs on 28, yes, okay, Pete, we've all done that. And number 4, which is the RFP for additional parking opportunities, that's been taken care of already, the TD Bank partnership.
Yeah, but
Yes.
TD Bank is an example
Yes.
of a successful partnership, and Mike and I met last week, 2 weeks ago, whenever we met.
Yeah.
To look at that, and that one lot I looked at, you're only looking at 12 spaces.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
How do you feel about, since you folks did do it, giving TD Bank and Cape Cod 5 an attaboy? If the selectmen do, this comes up at a town meeting, just, I don't even, well, maybe that wouldn't be a good idea, maybe they wouldn't want to do that.
No, this would only come up at
Okay,
selectmen's
okay,
meeting.
okay,
Yeah,
this is,
yeah.
okay. Cancel that idea.
But I mean, there may be, the golf course may have parking, if they wanna.
But they go right to dark, don't they?
But
Yeah,
yeah.
5 o'clock there.
But they, they may have another area that. they
Oh,
wanna
I'm sorry, I
expand
thought you meant the
on.
lot.
I have no idea.
Yeah,
Because there aren't a lot of options for
There
expanding.
are not.
none.
I mean, the fact that the banks are willing to let people park, that's huge.
All right.
So leave number 4.
Leave number 4. Number 3 is agreed upon 2 hours.
Yep.
Number 2, agreed upon with regard to the signage with the additional in-lot signage that you recommended, Charlie. And on number 1,
Well, number 2 doesn't have any,
talking of signs on either
that's
side
just,
of
those are the
residential, I'm
temporary
sorry.
signs.
Those are temporary signs,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Just the signage for the parking lot itself, being both entrances, as well as the signage that would be used on the inside of the parking lot on either side.
That's on number 3, but, well, number 3
Oh.
and number, but one of the things that, Dr. Gravity,
Mr. Hurst?
Hurst, thank you, brought up, was that it's not enough that once you get there, you see there's parking. What he was talking about was signage, as you enter into the village, parking ahead or something like that. That's what I got from him, maybe I was wrong, but what he was concerned about is people driving up, because it does say municipal, but it doesn't say municipal anymore. It says public parking
Right.
now, is that people don't see it in time and drive right by it. So that was what I thought.
Maybe
was bringing up.
something up by the V at Lower County. So if you're coming in from Dennis,
Yeah,
maybe a P, and I don't know if that has to go through state or we just put
I-
those.
Oh, probably
Probably
because
does.
it's a state road,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think that maybe having the large P, because it is, you don't really see that right, it's kind of hard to see, especially if you're
Yeah.
driving down
And on
28.
that, you wouldn't have the limitation, anything for, and those don't even need to be that big. I mean, when you go into the cities, there's a sign,
Yeah, and if it was blue or whatever, it
And
would
they
pop
jump
out.
out
Yeah,
at
it would
you.
jump out at you and make sure the trees prune
Yeah.
back. I think it was done this past.
So the city dwellers are gonna be really looking for those Ps.
even country bumpkins do too, though, you know.
Yeah.
So you're saying to add then these additional signs along 28, is that what I'm understanding?
Just a couple of them,
So, again, that's state road,
yep,
okay.
but that's for them to figure out. We're
Yeah.
just giving them
In a perfect world,
recommendation.
That's the Department of Public Works.
Perfect world, if there's an existing sign there now, with
Replace it.
whatever,
Tack
put
it
it
on.
below it.
Yeah.
Because there, I mean, if there's a speed limit sign,
Mhm.
maybe you put a parking, I don't know if, how the state allows
I don't know if
that.
you can add them to the street signs.
But-
Not to the street, but to the,
Yeah, I mean, the street sign itself.
I mean, I see our job as making a recommendation,
That's
not
right.
Right.
necessarily going through everything to say how you do it.
Right,
that's
right,
right.
That's what other people get paid for.
right.
Alrighty. So,
Back to number 1, can we just make sure that we're taking out that last sentence? The shuttle will be funded by businesses.
Yes.
Okay, just making sure.
yeah,
As well as the parking passes for employees, because we're not gonna do that now.
we can leave that in there as an option though, to present to the selectmen.
Is the lot at Bank Street going to be strictly for,
What if we say if a shuttle is available, then parking passes?
Okay,
that works,
yeah.
because if there's no shuttle, there's no parking pass, but.
And I'll have answers for next week's meeting, so then we can always take that piece out if there's not going to be a shuttle. But we'll know next week. I mean, if it's $10,000,
But if I heard you correctly, even if it's $5,000,
yeah, no, I know.
you don't
I don't
get
know
the
where-
feeling that that's a
Not
viable
unless I
option.
can come up with some clever idea of sponsorship that I can tap dance and hopefully smile cute and someone buy into it. I don't know. I'm gonna try.
Well, I think to Al's point, though, it's gonna be kind of a forced issue with the 2-hour parking signs. I think it's all gonna kind of hopefully work itself
Mhm.
out, and it's like, we have a solution for you. Yes, the 2-hour parking is for your customers, your clients, your business, but
Mm.
for your employees, it's over here in the 2-hour parking.
That
lot.
may
I'm-
change the attitude,
Right,
I'm gonna-
absolutely.
And also, when this is presented to the selectmen, because as the chair, you're gonna have to present this to the selectmen.
Okay.
You know, we put this in, we write this the way we're writing it, and then, you know, then you can elaborate with more. You know, the thought process here was,
right.
it's gonna
Mm.
force people to go off-site, and it is only 9 to 5, so if somebody is working an evening hour, if somebody has to work at 5 and they get there at 4:30, well, that's okay.
Right, right.
Because that's probably I would guess that's a lull anyhow.
Right,
The beaches are empty and the
Yeah.
people aren't here for dinner yet.
Right.
but this stuff certainly would help curb the,
Beach.
and then you can also discuss that, you know, if the 2-hour without any kind of fine or, you know, anything is happening this year, then the recommendation would be to say, all right, it needs to be really kind of looked at for parking enforcement in 2020.
Mhm.
Yeah, if we can do this without it becoming punitive.
Right, I agree.
Oh, I think
It's gonna
everybody,
be,
yeah.
you
But
know.
you are gonna get, I mean, I think one of the first meetings I gave the example in Chatham, down at Stage Harbor, which is a town parking lot. There was no federal funds, no nothing. So you have to have a resident pass to park there. It's only $25. Folks from the cities who are coming down to fish for the day,
Pay
they're
the
like,
ticket.
Easy.
okay, I'll pay the $25. I'm paying more than that, you know, to park for work a day. So-
I beat you 50 and they still do it.
Yeah.
Instead of driving back and getting a sticker, they pay the $50 ticket.
Yeah,
Or they get the ticket.
right.
You're right, it's short money.
Whether they pay or not,
Those
they don't.
are the two different things.
Yeah. All right, so, does anybody have anything to add to this?
What were we thinking when we were talking last Friday? We came up with something else. We both said, oh, let's try to remember that.
Oh, you do that too.
In regards to,
And
Every day.
Another idea, that something popped up when we were doing the cultural district discussions. I wish I jotted it down, but if we think of it, we'll put it in and you guys can look at it next week. Because I know there was something else that we had thought of.
And I think let me see, what am I here with this? On our agenda,
Kind of already talked about,
yeah, the last, on the new business relative to discussion with regard to parking on the property owned by Mr. Miller. I was down there the other day. There's probably a grand total of about 12 to 14 properties, parking spots.
well, on the smaller
Oh,
of
the
the
small
lots he
lot,
owns.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
I mapped it at Community Square.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Or slight rectangle, and, you know, with a buffer which you'd want along the road and the property lines, the most I got was like 14.
Okay.
Not a great parking layout,
that's the one behind the Minnow?
no.
No.
Or this is the one between Bayside and Heather's?
Yes, no,
No, the other
not
one.
even that one.
Oh.
The
Basically.
The one across-
condominiums,
Across from my office,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
small lot.
I mean, if the other
Where
area
is
were
that?
incorporated, which is
Right.
very limited parking.
I don't even know there
Yeah, I
was a
mean,
lot
there
there.
aren't
See
that
if the
many cars
condos,
parking
right.
there
Yeah.
at the condos. You know,
And he
that
owns,
may be
he
where
owns
you could have
unrestricted
an RFP and you
access
could
to
actually
this,
create
which
a
gives him
larger
access to
lot
this.
there.
And he said he could use that too if you wanted to.
And it would only be
Is
that
gravel
the-
too.
Okay, so as far as
This is
that,
the big lot,
that
but
new
he owns
business,
that too,
Mr.
right?
Miller, that's gonna be tabled.
I'm not even gonna put it in a minute.
No. All right, then I guess our future meeting is gonna be the 26th of March.
Yep, and I will, because the changes are brief, I will be able to make those.
We did brief them up.
Yeah. And get that out. And you and I need to do an agenda real quick,
Okay.
which should be easy.
We do agree to
Minutes and the,
All right, we'll get together after this?
yeah,
And that's at 10:30 next week, obviously?
yes.
10:30.
All right, we'll hear a motion to,
So
close
moved.
the meeting. All in favor?
Second.
Second,
Second. Thank you.
All those opposed, stay.
all right.